is one of these lessons that I think it's really easy to think we've grasped onto, but miss the point. Probably the easiest way to sort of think we got it and then miss the point is to try to make this a lesson over economics, which unfortunately I do see preachers from time to time try to make this into something about economics, and it really isn't. The economics of this is really just a backdrop to a much more important discussion, okay? The discussion that we're really talking about is a concept of entitlement. Now, whenever I use entitlement, I always want to throw a disclaimer out there. Entitlement is one of these words that gets used way too much, right? And it's almost always one generation looking at another generation, either the old at the young or the young at the old, and going, "You're entitled." Okay, I'm not weighing in on any of that at all. Okay, I'm talking about a very different concept of entitlement than what folks on the internet want to put in memes all day about this, that, or another generation. Okay, by the way, most of that, when you do the math on it, doesn't pan out. Folks as whole generations are generally anything. Okay, generations as a category can be problematic, but that's a whole different sermon or stump speech or whatever. But when we break down the story, we really get into this meat of part of what it means in a relationship with God and a relationship with each other. Okay? But to do that, we got to break the story down. So, when we look at the story, you start off with this usual daily wage. It's worth noting, the usual daily wage is a preset religious wage that comes from the temple. It's a very generous wage. But at this point in time, at this location that he's speaking, the usual daily wage, while the church is still arguing for it, is not a legal requirement of the Roman Empire. Okay? And so when he comes out there and says, "I will pay you the usual daily wage," he's paying way over what everyone else at all the other vineyards are paying. Okay? The reason we know this is because when you look at the end of the thing, he says, "Guys, when we agreed, you thought I was generous, right? I was generous to you. Why are you mad that I'm generous to these folks too?" Okay? So the first thing to realize is we're not talking about economics. We're not talking about a labor dispute. What we're really talking about is the landowner being generous with everyone, but that causing trouble. But it's the sort of trouble all of us can relate to. So growing up as a kid, I loved McDonald's. Who here loved McDonald's as a kid? Yeah. You know what I loved most about McDonald's as a kid? The Happy Meal. Right? Now, the reality, looking back, it's not a reality that's that far from me at all these days, is that when you get a Happy Meal, the best part as a kid is the toy, right? Okay? But there are 4 possible scenarios of what happens when 2 children open up a Happy Meal. Both could get the same toy. Both could get different toys. One could get a toy and the other one might not. Or neither would get a toy. Now, for those of you who are not parents, you probably think that the worst possible scenario is that neither child gets a toy. As a parent, I'm here to tell you, no. That is not the worst scenario. Okay? Because at least you go, "Oh, well, they messed up. No one got a toy. Too bad. But look, we have a playground to play on, and you have cheeseburgers." And that generally works. Worst case scenario, one gets a toy and one does not. This was true with me and my sister. This is true from generation to generation and probably throughout all time. Because what you're going to hear is the statement, "That's not fair." Now, as a dad who likes to think of himself as a good dad, on the first rollout when I heard "this is not fair," I decided the idiotic response should be reason with the children. So I nicely and eloquently pointed out that, well, it was not probably fair. It was an honest mistake. And after all, aren't we all ahead tonight because you got a cheeseburger and fries and apple slices and a soda, all of which are special foods. And not only did you get that, you have an entire playground to play on a rainy day that's dry and fun with friends. Aren't we all ahead? Yeah, anyone who's a parent knows how well that went over. The response was obviously not good. Worth noting, my mom let me know the same response existed for me and my sister. All people, all times, all places. Because we have this hardwired want to have things be fair. Now, sometimes when we talk about fair, what we mean is justice. God cares deeply about justice. Sometimes we mean fair, we mean equality. God cares deeply about equality. But sometimes when we make the fair argument, it's just straight up entitlement. God does not care for entitlement. This happens in our relationship with God, between us and the kingdom of heaven, right? The whole thing starts off with, this is the kingdom of heaven is like, right? See, there's really good news for us in this, and there's really annoying news too. The really good news is, I think, best highlighted by Paul when he says, neither death nor life, nor things of the past, nor things of the future, nor things of the present, no power on earth, of hell, or of heaven can separate you from the love of God. Right? You do not have the power to get God to stop loving you. I can tell you that God loves you even if I've never met you. I can tell everyone on the internet, which is everyone out there, that God loves them. And even though I have no clue who you are, the thing I know is you're a human, you're a child of God, and God loves you. That's true here, that's true through that camera. Because that's just God being God. Now that's the happy side of the good news, right? Because that's warm and it's comforting. It's like, yes, I'll never be alone. I'm always going to be loved. This is awesome. The annoying side to that good news is it applies to everyone. Which means as much as it applies to you, it applies to the person you hate the most. Now a lot of you are thinking, oh, I'm okay with that. Really? Because what I'm about to say will ruffle some feathers. You do realize that means that everyone's a child of God. God loves everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean both Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I just made everyone mad. They're children of God too, and they are loved. And there's nothing that either one of them have done, will do, or is doing that will stop that. That's hard for a lot of us to hear. Because we want it to be a world where we earned it. We want it to be a world where, but I went to church, and I did all the right things, and I said all the right things, and I voted for all the right people, and that's not fair because he's the opposite. Well, tough luck. God loves everybody. The problem is when we start acting that that's not true. When we start believing that we are loved more or more special or more than the other person. That's when we stop living into the grace that God gives us and everybody. So it has implications for our relationship with God. Also has huge implications to how we treat each other and how we live in community and what the church is about. See, when we realize that God loves us and that we are to love others and that everyone is a child of God, this changes our relationship with everyone around us. See, one question I get a lot is Nativity is doing really well in comparison to a lot of churches out there. People say, like, what is it about Nativity that makes you guys so different than a lot of other places? I always point to one of the things that's really different about us is we don't treat people special. Which sounds weird, because a lot of churches are out there trying to treat everyone super special. Problem with treating people special is what ends up happening is you treat them as if one person's more a child of God than another. Let me explain. How many churches out there has a person who says, I was a founding member. Therefore, even though the democratic process of the church says A, we're not doing that. Or I'm a big giver. Or I'm a whatever. Right? These sorts of things occur in which churches are tempted to treat one person as more a child of God than another. And when the churches do that, it leads them down dark and dangerous paths. Right? I'll give you an example. How many of you know what WELCA is? Raise your hand if you actually know what the organization is. WELCA. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 maybe. Okay, that's more than 10, 11, 12. Okay, 12, good. Okay, so it stands for Women of the ELCA. Unfortunately, this organization is mostly defunct at this point. It is very much struggling, and part of that is because of what it looked like on the ground about 10 years ago. Okay? And I'll give you sort of an encapsulation of what happened to a lot of pastors in a lot of places. As you all know, the early part of my career I made out of going into some congregations that had some pretty big problems. Okay? Big challenges ahead of them. So I'm at this congregation way out west, and I'd been preaching, been the pastor there for like 6 months. So I sort of knew people, but not totally yet. And these three little old ladies, World War II silent generation ladies, come up to me and they go, "Pastor," I'm like, "Yeah. No one wants to join our Welcome group. All the young folks don't show up. I want you to make them join our group." And I'm like, "Well, I can't make people join your group, but I can ask around. When you say young folks, what you thinking?" And they're like, "Well, young folks, the baby boomers. Those hippies need to join our group." And I was like, first of all, don't go calling all baby boomers hippies. That's not fair. And B, you do know there's like Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and okay, never mind. But sure, I'll talk to some of our leadership who are sort of female baby boomers who are active in our congregation doing lots of good stuff. So I go and I talk to folks, say, "Hey, have you ever thought about joining Welcome? They do really good things. They provide all the sandwiches for all the funerals. That's a really good, important ministry. They go ahead and meet every month and have a Bible study and da-da-da-da-da." And I was getting nowhere. Finally, 3 baby boomer women who were leaders in my congregation approached me and they go, "Pastor, you're not going to get anywhere." And I was like, "Why? These are sweet little old ladies." And they're like, "No, they aren't." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "I've never had a problem with them. They're the nicest little old ladies." And they're like, "Oh, you don't understand. They're going to be nice to you. You're the pastor. They hate us." And I'm like, "It can't be that bad. They are so sweet. They bring me cookies. They do all these nice things." Seeing that we were getting nowhere, one of the leaders said, "I'll make a deal with you. By the way, if you say I'll make a deal with you, you will have my ears perk up because I like deals. Okay, I'll make a deal with you." And I said, "Okay, what's the deal?" He said, "The 3 of us will join Welcome officially, and we will go every monthly to the meeting, to the Bible study. We will stay out of trouble. We won't ruffle any feathers. But when the first funeral comes along, we will bring sandwiches. Your side of the deal is you're going to stay in the kitchen and watch what happens next." I thought to myself, okay, that's an easy deal. Hang out in the kitchen, eat sandwiches, and they will make, okay, I'm on board. Oh boy, was I an idiot. So, the day comes, as funerals do. We get ready to bring the food. I'm hanging out in the kitchen. And here comes the first woman. She's got these ham salad sandwiches, like huge tray, stacked up high. Brings it in. Okay, one of my baby boomer women. She walks in, little old lady sees her, waves, says, "Thank you so much, come on over here." And points sort of to where like the island is. And the baby boomer woman brings it on over and she says, "Oh, can I have that?" And so the old lady takes it, looks at her and goes, "You cut them horizontally. We're diagonal people here," and dumps it in the trash can. "Go back and do it right." Yeah, I realized what I had just walked into. So needless to say, there were choice words for me afterwards from the 3 women who said, "Ha-ha, I won my bet." So I went to the little old ladies and I went, "Guys, you just lost 3 volunteers and they're never coming back. And this is a small town, which means no one in their family's ever coming back. Because you treated them horribly. What in the world was going on there?" Because I'm steamed. I'm like, what is going on? Little ladies look at each other like I'm speaking Swahili to them. They're just like, what is, pastor's mad? I have no clue why pastor's mad. What is going on here? And I'm like, I'm talking about the sandwich incident. You know, where you took perfectly fine sandwiches that, quote, weren't cut in the right way and threw perfectly good food in a trash can. You do understand a ham salad sandwich is a ham salad sandwich no matter how you cut it. And the little old ladies sort of look at each other, stunned that I'm upset about this, and absolutely confused. And I'm like, are you going to say anything? So one little old lady steps up and goes, Pastor, I don't think you saw what you think you saw. I'm like, really? Because I saw ham sandwiches go in the trash can. And she's like, well, yeah, ham salad sandwiches. I'm like, okay, so I saw ham salad sandwiches go in the trash can. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, so you're not disputing what occurred? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, I'm lost. The right side of my brain is looking at the left side of my brain, saying, is it dark in here? We might die at this moment. Because I'm like, how are we miscommunicating? And she says, it wasn't about the ham sandwiches. And I'm like, okay, if it wasn't about the sandwiches, then why'd you throw the sandwiches away? And she said, because that woman needed to learn her place in the hierarchy. She didn't know that I'm in charge, and if I want to throw away her sandwiches, I can throw away her sandwiches. Because I'm in charge. If I need her to go make me more sandwiches, she's going to make me more sandwiches. Yeah, ooh, is the right answer. So I turned back and I was like, you realize that that attitude will kill your group because it will die when you guys do. They stepped up and said, do you realize, Pastor, that when I joined this group back in 1950-something, my first 5 set of sandwiches were thrown in that trash can so I knew that the older ladies were in charge, and when I got to be an old lady, then I got to be in charge and treat them the way I was treated. Essentially the logic of hazing, right? See, the problem is that any form of hazing like that is built out of entitlement, right? She's like, because I was treated badly and I stuck with it, I got then the right to treat someone else badly. That is never how Christianity works. Or at least never how Christianity should work. And is the reason why God backs off of things like that and lets them die. Because that's not godly. That's not part of who God is. Why? The woman's basic argument was that she needed to tear down the other person to rebuild them in the image of what she thought a sandwich maker should be, right? And that's always the argument for hazing. I need to tear you down and build you up to whatever it is I'm building you up to be. And yet, that is not what Christ does. That's not who Christ is. Christ is not about coming in, tearing you down, and building you from the floor up. It's definitely not what the church is about, because that assumes that I or the church or we all know exactly what you are to be. But we don't. Because we are human and God is divine. God has unlimited knowledge. We have very limited knowledge. If you don't believe me about my limited knowledge, ask my children. They will tell you all the things I don't know. If that doesn't work, call my mom, my sister, my wife. I mean, you got a lot of people who will give you lists of things I don't know. The key is this. We as Christians don't tear you down to build you up, because if we're honest, we don't totally know what God's vision is for you. The only person who knows that is God. So what church does is not to tear you down to build you up, but rather walk with you as you discover who God called you to be, and help and guide with what wisdom we might have about what situations you might run into. But at the end of the day, it is your walk with all of us and God that each of us does. It's our own cross that each of us carries to figure out who it is that God is making us to be. It is never our cross to tell someone else the answer to that question. Because the second we think we know, we have lost our way. Because we never know what God is calling someone else to. I think this is one of the big problems Christianity's got. Too many churches out there say, everyone is welcome. Don't worry. Come on in. We'll break you down and build you up to be the person we think you should be. And the reality is, our call as church by God is to say all are welcome. We'll journey with you wherever God might lead. as you go out today in your prayer life, take a minute and ask yourself, do you really believe the good news message that nothing on earth or heaven or hell or past or present or future can separate you from the love of God? Do you believe that about yourself? And do you believe that about your worst enemy? Because until you do both, you don't really believe it for everyone. Then, once you've searched that out for yourself, then ask yourself, have you gone down the road of trying to tear others down, to build them up in some sort of otherly image? Whether or not it's within the church or within your fraternity or sorority or sports league or school or job or whatever other communities you might be part of. Because we as Christians are never called to do that. Never called to rip someone down and then build them back up. We are, however, called to walk with, to stand by, and support as everyone lives this crazy thing known as life. Take a few minutes in your life, a few moments of this week. Contemplate in prayer and see where that leads you.